How to create a column chart in Excel with two lines, one as the maximum value and one as the minimum value. And the cool thing is, whenever you change the dataset, as we can notice, the chart is going to update. Another feature that we're going to see how to use are going to be those data labels, which are to the right of the lines and can show the value of the line. So step by step from scratch, let's see how can we create this chart here in Excel. To create any type of chart in Excel, we first need to have a data set. And in this case, I have as my data set the months and some values. Of course, you could use a different type of data set, purchases, sales, inventory, level. It doesn't matter, okay, because it's going to work as long as you have some values to use. So let's get started with the values. So I want to select all the cells that make up my value, and then I can go to insert, and all the way here to the right, I can select the chart that I want to use, such as a column chart. Okay, now let me click on the chart, hold and drag up, just to make sure it's here in the screen at the same time that I can see the data set. I can click in this little circle, hold and drag to the right, because that way I can make sure the chart is a little bit larger. And we actually already have the chart in the screen. But we can do some changes, such as, instead of using a sequential numbers labels underneath the columns, we can actually use the categories that we have, such as January, February, March, in my case, okay? But you can use any different name or category that you have into your dataset. But anyway, how can I add now the lines within the chart to represent the maximum and the minimum limit? I can create here two more columns to help me. The first column can be minimum value, and the next one, the maximum value. Okay, I can select both of those columns, and in between one and another, click, hold, and drag to the right, because that way I can evenly increase the width of those columns. So let's say my minimum value is going to be 2000. Enter. I can use a minimum value or a different minimum value for each one of the rows that I have. So January is 2000, February is going to be 2200, for example, and so on. However, I can use equal numbers to all the rows that I have. So what I can do is, in the cell underneath, in cell C3, equals sign the cell above, and then enter. I can click in the cell where I input the formula. At the bottom right corner, click, hold, and drag down. Because the way, anytime I change the minimum value, 1500, for example, enter, all the other values are going to follow along. But let me go back here to 2000, okay? And as the maximum value, I can do something very similar. I want to use 6000, enter, and all the cells underneath are going to contain a formula that is equal sign the previous cell, and then enter. I can click at the bottom right corner, hold and drag down, and that's it. Now I want to select minimum value and also the maximum value. I can copy this information, use Ctrl+C, and then we're going to select the chart and hit Ctrl+V. So first of all, Ctrl+C, click on the chart, Ctrl+V to copy and paste. As we can notice, the chart now has two more columns, one in gray, another one in orange. However, we can change, instead of using columns, we can use lines. And to do it, let me click again on the chart, however, this time with the right click, and then change chart type, and I can go to combo here all the way down. Instead of using now a value as column, minimum and maximum value as column, we can change and use minimum value as a line and also maximum value as a line too. Okay, and we're basically done. So this is how we can add two lines in the chart to represent the minimum and maximum values. And of course, if I change any value right here, let's say instead of using the 6,000 as a criteria, I want to use now 10,000. I'm going to hit enter, and as we can notice, automatically the chart updates with this new criteria, with this new value. But let me go back to 6,000, okay? Now what I want to do is some changes in the layout of the chart. Maybe we can add here a label to be easier to know what is the value of the line to the maximum point, and also here to the minimum one. And also we can add some labels above each one of the columns. And to do it, let me first remove the elements that I don't want to use, such as those values here to the left. I can click and then hit delete. I also can click on these grid lines at the background and then get rid of. And now what I can do is I can select only the columns. So make sure you select only the columns, and you can go to chart design, and all the way to the left here in the top left corner, you can click add chart element. And I want to use some data labels outside end. That's it. Now we can see the values of all the columns at the top of each one of those columns. Another thing that we can do, we can increase the width of the column. So let me right click now on the column and then format data series. And all the way here to the right, we can change the gap width. I can actually decrease this value using this little scroll that I have. Click, hold, and drag to the left. Because that way we can increase the width of the columns, and I think it's much easier to see the values. Now, instead of using these sequential numbers as the legend of the columns, I can change to use the number or the name of the months that I have as my first column. So let me right click on the chart, and then I can go to select data. And in this second option here, the button to the right, edit, I can click, and then I can select all the months that I have, all the categories. I don't need to select the header because the header is not going to be part of the names of the columns. So let me click OK. OK again. And as we can see, now instead of having numbers, we have actually the name of our categories. Now let me click on this line at the top, and I can also make some changes here, such as right click, format data series, and all the way to the right, I can use a fill color, let's say a solid one. I can use a green color, however, you can use the color that you like the most. As the width, I want to increase a little bit this number to make it easier to see, maybe 4. Okay. I'm going to do something very similar to the orange line here underneath. I want to use this time a red color with width of 4. And to make sure now we can add the data label to the right of the lines that we have, I can click on the first line. And as we can notice, Excel is going to select all the points that made up here my line. However, I don't want to use all the points. I only want to use the one to the right. So I can click on this point again to make sure I am only using this point. And then I can go to chart design, add chart element, and use a, let's say, data label to as this option here, data call out. Yeah, that's it. I'm going to do the same process to the red line, select only the last point, and then chart design, add chart element, and then data label, data call out. That's it. But as we can notice, this data label is going to be above the line that we have underneath. And to make sure we can put this data label to the right or off to the side, we can click on the chart, but make sure you not click on the corner, but within the area of the chart, because that way you can enable this another rectangle, and you can use this inner circle to click, hold, and drag to the left. because that way you can give some space, some blank space here to the right. And with this blank space, you can click on the data label and move it around like I'm doing here. As we can notice, the data label is showing us the category name and also the value. And the same for the second data label. But I don't want to show the name of the category, only the value. So let me right click on this data label and go all the way down to format data labels. Because Excel is going to open those options here, data label options, and I can choose the one that I want to use. However, be mindful because as we can notice, nothing here is activated. So I need to click again on the data label. Okay. Now the informations are being shown, and then I can select only the ones that I want to display, such as the value. So let me uncheck category name. Okay, that's it. I want to do the same process for the second data label. So let me select again and unmark category name. Now I can go all the way here to the left, fill and line. And as the border, I want to use maybe the standard one. As the fill, I want to use solid fill, a red color, the same that we used before. And to the data label here to the top, let me click again. Okay, so I always click 2 times. Fill, I want to use the same green that I used before. And that's it. Now let me close this panel and go all the way here to Home tab. I can increase the font size maybe to 12 and change the color to a white one. And I can do the same process to this reddish data label. Increase the font size and change the font color to white. And that's it, we're done. So this is how we can create a 2-line chart in Excel with those data labels. And of course, whenever you change any value, it can be whether value, column B, column C, or column D, automatically the chart is going to update. So let me change here the maximum value to 5,000 and then enter. As we can notice, this line updates. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or any suggestions to the next videos, let me know, comment down below, and I see you in the next one.